Walk past any building constructed before 1920 and you'll notice something strange. Two doors side by side, one human-sized, one massive, easily 12 feet tall, wide enough to drive a small cart through, tall enough that a man carrying a load on his shoulders wouldn't have to duck or angle sideways. And if you've ever wondered why architects would waste money on a door 3 times larger than anyone needs, the answer isn't about architecture at all. It's about coal and milk and ice, and a labour system so invisible that most people today don't even know it existed. These doors weren't decorative, they weren't symbolic, they were functional infrastructure for an economic system that required constant daily deliveries of bulk materials that kept every building operational. The tall door was the servants' entrance, but not for people, for cargo. And the cargo came every single day. In 1900, the average American urban household received deliveries 6 days a week. Coal for heating, ice for refrigeration, milk in glass bottles, bread from the bakery, laundry pick-up and drop-off, groceries in bulk. Every building, whether residential or commercial, was a logistics hub, and none of it could fit through a normal door. The scale was staggering. In New York City alone, the ice delivery industry employed over 15,000 men during summer months. They serviced approximately 1 million households and tens of thousands of commercial establishments. Every hotel, every restaurant, every bar, every butcher shop, every fish market. All of them required daily ice delivery. The city consumed roughly 5 million tons of ice annually. That's 10 billion pounds of frozen water, which are cut from lakes and rivers, stored in warehouses, and delivered block by block to every building in the city. Coal was even bigger. New York burned through approximately 8 million tons of coal per year for residential heating alone. That doesn't include industrial use, which added another 12 million tons. To put that in perspective, that's 40 billion pounds of coal, all of it delivered in £100 sacks by men working for poverty wages. The logistics required thousands of coal yards spread across the city, each one a transfer point between the rail system that brought coal from Pennsylvania mines and the horse-drawn wagons that distributed it to individual buildings. Coal was the backbone. In northern cities, a typical middle-class home burned through 3 tons of coal every winter. That's £6,000. Delivered in £100 sacks by men who carried them on their backs from the street to the basement. The coal chute helped, but the initial delivery required a door wide enough and tall enough for 2 men to maneuver a hand truck stacked with sacks. Ice came in blocks weighing between 25 and 300 pounds, depending on the household's icebox size. The iceman used iron tongs to grip the block, slung it over his shoulder with a leather pad for protection, and hauled it into the basement or directly to the kitchen icebox. A standard residential door was 36 inches wide. An ice block was often 24 inches across. Add the iceman's body, the tongs, the angle needed to maneuver without shattering the ice, and you needed at least 60 inches of clearance. Milk delivery happened daily because pasteurization wasn't standard until the 1920s. Raw milk spoiled within hours in warm weather. The milkman didn't just drop bottles at the door. In apartment buildings and larger homes, he entered through the service entrance, carried metal crates holding dozens of glass bottles, and restocked the household's milk cabinet or icebox directly. The crates were bulky, the doors accommodated them. But here's what most people miss. These deliveries didn't happen during normal business hours. They happened at dawn. Between 4 and 7 in the morning, while the household slept, an entire shadow economy moved through American cities. The coalman, the iceman, the milkman, the baker's boy, the laundry service, the grocery wagon, all entering through that tall door in the back or side of the building, moving goods into the basement or service areas and leaving before the homeowner woke up. This required keys, or more accurately, service access systems. In urban apartment buildings, the ground floor service entrance was often left unlocked until 7 in the morning, with a bell system that allowed delivery workers to announce their arrival to the building superintendent or the household staff. In wealthier homes, there was a separate key system. The iceman had a key, the milkman had a key, the coal delivery service had a key, strangers with access to your home while you slept. But it wasn't considered strange because the entire economic system depended on it. Think about what that means. In a typical brownstone in Brooklyn or Boston, the iceman would unlock the service entrance at 5 in the morning, descend the stairs to the basement, navigate through the coal room and storage area, locate the icebox, remove the old melted ice, insert the new block, collect the drip pan, empty it into the basement drain, replace it, and leave. All while the family slept 2 floors above. He did this for 30 to 40 homes per day. He knew the layout of every basement. He knew which doors stuck, which stairs creaked, where the icebox was located in each home. The same intimacy applied to coal delivery, milk delivery, all of it. These men knew your home better than most of your guests. They accessed spaces that visitors never saw: the basement, the coal room, the service pantry, the back stairs. They were ghosts moving through the infrastructure of daily life, essential but invisible. This created a strange social dynamic. These workers were granted access that would be unthinkable today, yet they were simultaneously expected to remain unseen and unheard. The ideal delivery man completed his work without waking the household, without tracking dirt into the living areas, without making his presence known. The doors themselves were designed to reinforce this separation, wide enough for the work, positioned to avoid the main entrance, built to facilitate the flow of goods while keeping the workers out of sight. The architecture reflected this system. In brownstones and row houses, the tall door was set below street level, leading directly to the basement. Stairs descended from the sidewalk. Delivery workers never entered the main living spaces. They accessed the service areas, the coal room, the root cellar, the storage pantries, all of which were designed as buffer zones between the street and the home. In commercial buildings, the pattern was even more extreme. Department stores, hotels, office buildings, and restaurants all had massive service entrances, sometimes wider than the main public entrance. The Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York, built in 1893, had a service entrance 14 feet wide and 16 feet tall. Every day, this door admitted coal deliveries measured in tons, ice deliveries for the hotel's multiple kitchens and bars, laundry carts for hundreds of guest rooms, and food shipments that filled entire wagons. The economics were brutal. Delivery work paid almost nothing. In 1910, an iceman earned about $12 a week. A coal shoveler earned $10. For context, a department store clerk earned $15, and a factory worker earned $18. The differential wasn't accidental. Delivery labor was considered unskilled, despite requiring immense physical strength and endurance. The average iceman carried over 4 tons of ice per day during summer months. That's 8,000 pounds. Lifted, carried, maneuvered through doorways, downstairs into iceboxes. 6 days a week. Coal delivery was worse. A coal shoveler working residential routes would deliver to 30 to 40 homes per day. At £100 per sack and an average delivery of 3 to 5 sacks per home, that meant moving between 9,000 and 20,000 pounds of coal daily. In winter, often in freezing rain or snow, the job had a life expectancy. Most coalmen developed chronic back injuries by their 30s and couldn't work past 40. But the real story isn't just the physical toll. It's the economic structure that made this labour so cheap. Most delivery workers weren't employees in the modern sense. They were contractors paid by the delivery, not by the hour. An iceman might make 3 cents per block delivered. Sounds reasonable until you realise most residential customers bought 1 or 2 blocks per delivery. To earn $12 a week, an iceman needed 350 to 400 deliveries. 60 to 70 deliveries per day. 6 days a week, rain, snow, or blistering summer heat. The companies operated on razor-thin margins. Ice harvesting companies cut ice from frozen lakes in winter, stored it in insulated warehouses packed with sawdust, distributed it year-round. A single block cost about 2 cents to harvest and store. They sold it for 8 to 12 cents. Sounds profitable. Except delivery infrastructure ate most of that margin. Horses, wagons, drivers, the icemen themselves, warehouse rent. Profit came from volume, not margin, which meant speed, which meant brutal labour conditions. Coal companies faced similar pressure. Anthracite coal from Pennsylvania arrived by rail. Coal yards bought it by the ton, stored it in outdoor piles, sold it by the sack. A ton cost the yard $3. They sold it for 6 to 7. Again, sounds profitable until you account for breaking it into sacks, loading wagons, delivering, unloading into basements, and managing hundreds of deliveries daily. The tall doors were built for this labour, but they were also built to hide it. In wealthy neighbourhoods, service entrances were positioned on side streets or rear alleys, never on the main facade. The message was clear. The people who made your life possible should not be seen. The coal that heated your home, the ice that preserved your food, the milk that fed your children, all of it arrived through a door designed to be invisible from the street. This began to change in the 1920s. Electrification eliminated the need for daily ice delivery. Refrigerators became standard in middle-class homes by 1930. Central heating systems replaced coal furnaces, first in wealthy homes, then in apartment buildings, finally in working-class housing by the 1950s. Pasteurization and refrigerated rail transport meant milk could be delivered less frequently. Grocery stores replaced daily delivery services. The transition happened fast. In 1920, about 200,000 icemen worked in American cities. By 1935, that number dropped to 70,000. By 1950, the profession had vanished. Same story for coal delivery. In 1920, residential coal employed nearly 300,000 men. By 1960, fewer than 10,000 remained, mostly serving older buildings that hadn't converted to oil or gas. Where did these workers go? Some transitioned to other delivery jobs. The milkmen survived longer than the icemen because milk delivery adapted to the automobile age and continued into the 1960s in many cities. Some moved into factory work, which paid better and didn't destroy your back by age 40. But many simply aged out of the workforce with no safety net. There was no unemployment insurance for gig workers in 1930. No disability benefits for men whose spines had been compressed by decades of hauling 100-pound loads. They disappeared into the same invisibility that had defined their working lives. The tall doors became obsolete, but they couldn't be removed. Load-bearing walls, structural integrity, historical preservation laws, all of it meant that once a door was built into a building's design, it stayed. So American cities are filled with these architectural ghosts, evidence of an economic system that ran on invisible labor, bulk commodity dependence, and a spatial logic that separated the people who consumed from the people who delivered. Today, when you see those doors, you're looking at infrastructure built for a world where every household was a daily logistics operation, where strangers entered your home before dawn, where physical labor was so cheap that it made more sense to pay men to haul 100-pound blocks of ice up flights of stairs than to invest in mechanical refrigeration. Where coal smoke filled every city because heating a home required burning tons of rock hauled from underground mines by men who died of black lung in their 50s. The doors are still there, most of them sealed now, painted over, converted into windows or bricked up entirely, but in older neighborhoods you can still find them, 12 feet tall, wide enough for 2 men and a hand truck, built for a world that needed constant feeding. And the people who did the feeding were never meant to be seen. That's why the door was so tall, not for grandeur, not for style, for coal sacks and ice blocks and milk crates. For an economy that ran on bulk deliveries and invisible labor. The buildings remember, even if we've forgotten. Walk through the older parts of any American city and you'll see them everywhere once you know what you're looking for. Brooklyn brownstones, Boston row houses, Chicago graystone buildings, Philadelphia townhouses, all of them built during the same era, all featuring the same architectural element. The tall service door, sometimes obvious, standing next to the main entrance, sometimes hidden around the side or accessed from a rear alley. But it's there. We've turned these buildings into million-dollar real estate, renovated them, restored them, celebrated them as classic American architecture. We give tours pointing out ornate molding, original hardwood floors, the craftsmanship of the stonework. But we almost never mention the service entrance. We almost never talk about what it was for or the labor system it represented. The doors have been repurposed, converted into storage closets, turned into wine cellars, bricked over and hidden behind drywall. The architecture remains, but the context has been erased. And that erasure isn't accidental. It's easier to admire these buildings when you don't think about the men who broke their backs making them functional. Next time you walk past one, stop. Look at the height. Imagine the Iceman at 4 a.m. hauling 200 pounds on his back. Imagine the coal man in January covered in black dust, unloading ton after ton into basements across the city. Imagine the milkman with his crate of glass bottles, moving silently through a house while the family slept. The door was never meant for us. It was meant for them. And the fact that we've forgotten tells you everything about how we remember labor. We remember the buildings. We forget the people who made them work.